Hi class, so as I said we'll be reading chapter 9 and 10 and I'll read them out loud so you can enjoy your Christmas party that you're having. Hopefully you're having fun. Okay, I shall get started with chapter 9. An exciting escape. At the top of the well, all the five looked at one another thankfully. Well, we've escaped, said Popoff, wiping his forehead with a big red handkerchief. Thanks to the good old goblin dog, said Fenella, giving him a hug, at which he was very pleased. Where exactly are we now? Asked Mary, looking around her. Look, there's a cottage over there. Let's go and ask where we are. They went up to the little cottage and knocked at the door. It was open, and oh dear, who should it be there but the Green Wizard, Sly One's best friend. The goblin dog knew him at once and whispered to the others. Ah, said the Green Wizard, smiling round, pray come in. Nobody wanted to. They didn't trust the Green Wizard, and he might ask them some very awkward questions. They were sure he had recognised Fenella. You must have a cup of tea with me, said the wizard. I shall be very much offended if you don't, and I'm not a very nice person then, you know. Come in, do. I'll put the kettle on. There didn't seem to be anything else to do. They went into the cottage in silence, and the wizard took up the kettle but looked annoyed. No water. Pardon me a minute. I'll get some from the well. It won't take a minute to let the bucket down. He ran out of the cottage to with the kettle and went over to the well. My goodness, Sly One is still at the bottom, said Popoff. He'll come up in the bucket. They were all very worried, and they stood and looked at the wizard winding the chain of the bucket. It must have reached the bottom of the well by now, and he began to draw it up. And dear me, it seemed as if it was heavy indeed. Suppose Sly One's in the bucket. What shall we do? Said Peter in dismay. Run, of course, said Mary. But we'll never outrun the gnome, said Popoff. I know. The goblin dog is big and strong enough to take us on the back and run with us, aren't you, dog? Certainly, said the dog, willing to do anything for his little princess. Look, the bucket is coming to the top now. They all watched, and just as they feared, the gnome Sly One had climbed into the bucket and had come up with the water. He leapt out in a furious rage and began to talk to the wizard, who listened in greatest amazement. Then he pointed towards his house, and the gnome grinned in delight. He's told him we're here, groaned Popoff. Come on, everybody, we must run. They rushed out the back door one by one, and they climbed up on the broad back of the goblin dog, held tight to his hair, and off they went at top speed. The Green Wizard and Sly One came running out the back door in a fury when they had found Fenella and the others had gone. They saw the dog rushing away with the rest on his back, and the gnome danced with rage. Then he and the wizard ran indoors. They're up to some mischief or other, said Popoff, looking back. They'll be after us before long. On went the dog, galloping on his 4 feet, and everyone clung tightly. He went very fast indeed, and Mary thought surely no one could ever catch them up. The gnome and the wizard are after us, cried Popoff suddenly. They've got a cat from Giantland, bigger than a donkey, and they're retiring along at an awful rate. It was quite true. The giant cat covered ground tremendously fast, and Popoff began to think it would catch them up. Faster, faster, he cried, and the goblin dog galloped more furiously than ever. The children had hard work to keep on his back, and if Fenella hadn't discovered 2 hard, knobbly things sticking out the dog's back, she would have fallen off. She held on to the knobs, wondering what they were. Then a dreadful thing happened. The dog suddenly tumbled and gave a yelp of pain and began to limp. What's the matter? Cried Popoff. It's a thorn in my foot, groaned the poor goblin dog, limping along on 3 legs. Stop a minute and I'll get it out for you, called Popoff. The dog stopped and Popoff slipped off his back. The dog held up his foot and Popoff saw a big thorn there, and he took the tweezers from his tray and pulled out the thorn. But alas, the dog's foot was so sore he could hardly put it to the ground. Popoff gave a despairing look back at the giant cat, who was swiftly coming nearer with the yelling gnome and wizard on its back. Then Fenella called to him, Popoff, what are these lumps on your back? On the dog's back. Popoff looked and gave a howl of joy. Goblin dog, you've never grown your wings. All goblin dogs can do that. Grow them now, whilst I rub the knobs and say the magic word. Then you can fly. I'd love to, said the dog, pleased. I've always wanted wings, but Sly One would never let me grow them. Popoff began to rub the knobs and chanted a string of strange magic words as he did so. To the children's enormous surprise, the knobs grew larger, and they burst like flower buds, and out of them unfolded great yellow wings covered with large blue spots and circles. It was marvellous. The goblin dog flapped them around proudly. "Quick, get on again," he called. "We shall be caught unless I get away now." They all scrambled on, horrified to see how near the gnome and wizard were. Then up in the air rose the goblin dog, flapping his enormous yellow wings and going along at a great rate. Pop-Off looked down and saw the gnome and the wizard looking up at them in dismay. Their giant cat could not fly, but Sly One was not so easily beaten. He clapped his hands 7 times and called out some magic words, and hey presto, his giant cat grew 4 pairs of wings and rose up in the air. He could fly as well as the goblin dog. "Quick, goblin dog, quick!" shouted Pop-Off, and the dog panted loudly as he flew. Peter looked down desperately. Oh, to see the bright towers and the spires of Fairyland! Then he suddenly gave a shout. Look, look, can you see that? In the distance, it's Fairyland, it's Fairyland." "Home, home," shouted Fenella. "Hurry, dear goblin dog, hurry, we'll soon be home." But the goblin dog was getting tired. He had a heavy load on his back and his wings flapped more and more slowly. At last he was nearing Fairyland, so he flew so slowly that Pop-Off was certain the giant cat would catch them up. Then a fine and unselfish idea came into his head. "Goblin dog, fly down to the ground and let Peter and Mary get off," he said. "Then you fly to Fairyland with Fenella. You'll fly much quicker then." At once the dog obeyed, and Fenella cried and said no, she wouldn't go without them, but Peter was firm and set her safely on the dog's back. Then up they went together, the dog and Fenella, and Pop-Off was glad to see how much faster they could fly now the dog had a lighter load. He pulled the others under a bush, for the giant cat was passing over. The cat circled overhead for a few minutes to find out if anything was to be seen, but as the 3 of them kept perfectly still, it soon flew off again after the dog and Fenella. "Now we must make our way home again as fast as we can," said Peter. "Please come with us, Pop-Off. My mother will be so pleased to know you when she hears what a friend you've been." "Well, I'd like to see you safely back home," said the peddler. "So I will come." End of chapter.